I remember it like a slow-motion movie. Bruno, my dog, collapsed on the kitchen floor, his paws stiffened, his eyes blacked out for a second, and suddenly he started twitching as if someone was pulling his limbs with invisible strings. Foam was coming out of his mouth, and he was making a deep sound I'd never heard from him before. I had the empty bag of treat in my hands, the same treat I'd laughed at on TV, and in seconds, turned my house into a doggy emergency room. If you have a dog, stop for a second and listen to this whole thing. What happened that afternoon taught me more than 1,000 articles. Subscribe if you want me to tell you not only the story, but also what really works when panic strikes. Bruno came into my life when he was 1 year old. He was a large mixed breed dog, with eyes that seemed to be constantly joking and a tail that only knew how to wag toward happiness. He was my walking companion, my excuse to open the door on dull days, and without exaggeration, the most honest judge of my kitchen. If I nibbled on something, there he was, making that please just a crumb face. He wasn't a hyper-violent or overly curious dog. He had instinct, yes, but he wasn't the type to brazenly steal food. My family and I had always been permissive with a little human food, a crumb of bread, a piece of cheese, a cookie on birthdays. It's not that I thought it was right, but, you know, small concessions become habits. On that day in question, there were 4 of us at home: friends, laughter, a movie, and a box of those sweets that sell by the bucketful at the store. I took one, Bruno sniffed. I left him on the table for 2 minutes, and in a moment of distraction, he had already stuck his head in the box. It was quick and silent. I thought he was going to spit it out or simply swallow it without any problem. In the first half hour, he seemed normal. His tail was wagging. He even took a nap on his pillow. I gave him a little affection and went back to the movie. The night continued, and then the twist happened. First, vomiting, something I initially associated with a temporary stomach upset. Then rigidity, the first episode of shaking. And within minutes, convulsions. My heart was like a... It turns out that some foods are dangerous for dogs. What seems like a harmless snack to us can be toxic to them. In my case, the innocent candy contained an ingredient that dogs don't process properly and can trigger very serious reactions, from vomiting and diarrhea to seizures and organ failure. The dilemma was brutal and swift. Wait and see if he gets better or rush to the vet. Call the pet emergency line or try a homemade trick to calm him down. Those split-second decisions define you as an owner. You can act quickly and intelligently, or let fear paralyze you and make the situation worse. Guilt also hits hard. I kept telling myself, if only I had put the box away, if only I hadn't given him that little piece, if only I hadn't let him come up to the table. Guilt is useful insofar as it forces you to learn, but if it paralyzes you, you become part of the problem. And in those first hours, I didn't have time to feel guilty. I had to act. When Bruno really started convulsing, the clock lost its meaning. The room became a mix of cameras, breathing, and urgency. First, I separated him from the box of treats and saved it as evidence, in case the vet needed it. It wasn't a theatrical gesture, it's practical. Knowing what your pet ate helps professionals. I called the emergency vet. The voice on the other end of the line was an anchor. What did he eat? How much does he weigh? How long ago was it? You breathe and answer. They told me to come now. In the meantime, to prevent the seizure from harming him, I put a towel under his head and kept him away from furniture and corners. I wasn't a hero. I did the basics that any emergency guide recommends: safety and immediate call.
Important, never ever pu object in the mood of a convulsing animal.
In the car, I felt like everything was breaking down. My hands sweaty on the steering wheel, Bruno leaning against my leg, his eyes partially closed. At the vet, they handled the situation with professionalism. They explained to me that seizures due to toxic ingestion are complex. They depend on the type of substance, the quantity, and the animal's weight. And that the time window for intervention is critical. I remember that word, time. The veterinary team placed Bruno under observation, started fluids to maintain his blood pressure and perfusion, and administered medication to control the seizures. I won't list drugs or doses, that's not YouTube's job, but I can say this: professional medical care can make the difference between a reversible seizure and irreversible damage.
I saw it with my own eyes. Speed and protocol saved Bruno.
Hours after the first seizure, I saw people talking to me calmly. They gave me updates. Her vital signs were beginning to stabilize, her breathing to regulate. But the fear was still there, clinging like a smell that won't go away. I learned that there are 3 things that matter in these cases: identifying what she ate, getting to the doctor as soon as possible, and following their instructions without self-administering dangerous homemade prescriptions. While we waited, I remembered small details that now made sense. The box on the table, the laughter that distracted me, the habit of leaving food in plain sight. They were all pieces of the same puzzle. That was both educational and painful. But also, in the midst of the heat, I learned to separate the paralyzing guilt from real responsibility. Guilt helped me change habits. Closing the kitchen, educating friends, having emergency numbers handy. And responsibility made me write a no list that I'm now sharing with you. Don't list. Learning from my mistakes.
Don't leave human food in plain sight.
Don't assume a small piece is safe.
Don't improvise home treatment without consulting your vet.
Keep the veterinary emergency number accessible. I also learned about emotional complexity. Seeing your dog uncontrollable is recognizing the fragility of that blind trust they place in you. And that's not something to dramatize. There comes a time when the narrative no longer allows for half measures. The first seizure lasted minutes that seemed like hours. Bruno lost control of his body. His muscles contracted and relaxed in waves, his mouth filled with foamy saliva, and there was a moment when I thought this would be irreversible. The emergency room was bustling, the team spoke in low voices, and I felt the skin on my hands peeling from my bones from the tension. The worst part wasn't just watching the seizure, it was imagining his life without him. My mind conjured absurd farewell scenes, meaningless programs that grief gives you. And then his breathing. When the seizure subsided a little, his chest gasped for air. Every breath posed a risk. Fluid aspiration, respiratory arrest, a drop in blood pressure. The vet told me something blunt. We've controlled the crisis for now, but we'll keep an eye on him. The first 24 to 48 hours are critical. That phrase, critical, resonated through my body like a bell. I stood beside him, watching the lights on the monitors record his heart rate. I went into observer mode, tears held back, breathing measured, grateful for every small sign of recovery. The next 48 to 72 hours were a succession of checkups, medications, and small advances. Bruno responded to treatment. The seizures didn't return after the initial intervention, and little by little, his vision returned. The most exciting part of the recovery was seeing him, day by day, regain interest in his surroundings, sniffing his pillow, gradually accepting wet food, wagging his tail with that mix of feline embarrassment and gratitude. The vet explained the steps to follow: blood tests to assess kidney and liver function, depending on the toxicant, neurological observation, and a transition plan home with clear instructions, not leaving access to the problematic food, avoiding conditions that favor accidental ingestion, and observing any recurring neurological signs. It's not a list to scare you, it's a guide to protect you. At home, we changed everything: locks on the cabinets. Today Bruno sleeps at my feet as I write these lines. If you saw him resting, you wouldn't say that a few weeks ago I was afraid of losing him. I celebrate every bark, every silly jump in the morning, and above all, I celebrate the second chance the vets gave us. This story tore me apart inside, yes, but it also taught me not to be complacent. Caring is an active responsibility, not emotional posturing. If you heard this story, I ask two things. First, subscribe so we can continue learning how to better care for our animals together. Second, share this video with someone who has a dog. That person might need to see this and not know it. Like it if you think more owners should know about the hidden risks in seemingly harmless foods. And tell me below, has something similar ever happened to you? What did you do? Your experience may help another owner react in time. Thanks for staying until the end. Bruno and I owe you one. Preventing together is the best way to show love.